Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my incredible pleasure, and I don't say this lightly, it is my incredible pleasure to welcome Mr. Paul Downs from It Works
Thank you.
to the podcast. Welcome, Paul.
That's a very kind intro.
Mate, it's so cool to hear your accent mixed with the Aussie accent, mixed with the Kiwi accent. You and I have worked on a few projects together over the years, and you reached out and you said, look, why haven't you had me on the pod yet? And I'm like, I don't have a good reason why. So let's make it happen. Let's schedule it in. Let's carve out some time and let's have a great conversation. So I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
Just over 2 weeks ago, listening to you talking to Paul Waddy, and actually, this is pretty good. Why is the LSB on? I thought, I'll drop you a line, and here we are.
I love it when you put a thumb on the scale. I love it when you call me to the mat and call me to account. And look, what's interesting is you and I are in very similar businesses, very similar roles, very similar tasks, very similar things we bring to the table. You're obviously about 10, 20 times the size of my consultancy. What's interesting is we both have had 20 plus years experience in this space. And I've been on the agency side of your consulting services on multiple occasions in the past down in ANZ. I'm now based primarily in North America. I do a lot of work in ANZ still, but a lot of work in North America. But what's interesting is that the challenges that most of the clients we work with face, I've been doing this for 24 years. I haven't seen the challenges change all that much. Sure, the underlying tech has changed. Sure, the stacks have changed. Sure, the integrations have changed. Sure, the expectations have changed. But ultimately, the challenges that a lot of these brands face haven't. And I don't know if you've found the same.
It's actually 30 years now up in the technology industry. And as you rightly say, the technology has moved on dramatically as you would expect it to do, or you should expect it to do. But the fundamental kind of problem that I believe IT is there to solve is still the same. And that is articulating what are you trying to achieve? What are you doing now? How could it be into the future? Writing that down and then comparing it against a bunch of solutions, scoring it, and then selecting the most appropriate one for the business. And that sounds really simple, but it is staggering how many businesses just don't see the value in doing that. And as I said to you just a minute ago, and believe the software salesman that whatever solution, and they're pretty much, there's a few that are slightly more ethical than the others, but the majority of them their job is to get you to sign on the dotted line and will tell you pretty much anything to do that. The amount of businesses that have believed the hype, drunk Kool-Aid, and ended up with very expensive systems without a really clear understanding of what it's going to deliver materially to the business. So again, I think a lot of clients, you've probably seen this when you select something and then you go into the implementation phase and they think the project's done when it goes live. I'm like, hang on a second, that's that. You're just getting started now. I mean, that was the easy bit. Now you've got to repay the investment. Now you've got to restructure the team, or you've got to downsize the team, or we'll move people into new roles. It's the benefits realization phase that you're in now. And that's when it gets hard because you're dealing with people. And that has that's been consistent in 30 years. And that's why I think that our job, and I think in the technology industry, and I think our job in particular in consultancy, is to manage that people bit. Engineering is fairly straightforward, right? It's finite. You can plans, blueprints, and then you just follow the plan, right? Well,
here's the box, color in the colors.
It's finite. You can wrap your arms around it. The change management bit, it's where the people involve people, where it all gets a bit curly and challenging. And that's why whenever we embark on any big engagement, so if we talk like an ERP, which is going to be open heart surgery on the business effectively, and it is, the first question is, how tight's your leadership team? Do you trust each other? Can you be honest with each other? If the answer is no, which it invariably is, then I'm like, okay, we need to work on that first, because you're about to get on probably the biggest roller coaster of your life with your team. And if you don't have each other's backs, the project's going to fail, right? 100%. So I agree.
You're screwed. You're screwed. And I think one of the other points that you make, which is just nail on head, is that if I'm talking to software vendors and I operate by the 80-20 rule, if a software vendor can hit sort of roughly 80% of the requirements out of the box without radical customization, and they're probably in the consideration set. But 99% of the time, even the ethical vendors, they might be honest about what the technology is capable of achieving, but what they oftentimes are not clear about, I think even internally themselves, which means they can't be transparent with the brands, is what are the internal resources you are going to need to apply to this technology to get any kind of value out of it. So in other words, okay, it could be a CDP, for example, and they might say, look, it's going to take you 3 months to implement. It's going to cost you $20,000 to implement. And it's going to cost you $100,000 a year worth of license. So that's all fine and good. But is it going to take 1 or 5 or 10 internal resources to maximize the value of the CDP in the business? Do I need 1 marketer or do I need 10? And so this is the area that I see over and over again that is consistently overlooked both by the vendor and by the merchant, which is what is the team I actually need to deploy against this technology to get any kind of return out of it?
There's 2 things I'd say on that. One is break down when I call something a system. System is a combination, it's an application, right? Some processes that that application is automating. And then there's some people or skills and capabilities to be able to use the features within that application, right? That is the system. Why are you only looking at one part of that, i.e. the application? You need to consider the whole lot. And then the other part is, like I said before, that's where the benefit realization plan comes in, which is, okay, so whoever's accountable, so the business owner that is accountable for delivering the benefits, okay, what is your plan? So we're going to invest X $1,000. What is your plan to deliver the value that was proposed when we made the decision to spend X $1,000? Now that could be, okay, we've got a kick-ass strategy for email marketing and we've got the content ready to go, blah, blah, blah. We're now going to have the ability to execute more campaigns or more triggered campaigns, right? Exactly. We can do all that. And that's
segmentation or whatever.
Or through the automation, we are going to need less people so we can reduce the size of the team and move these people somewhere else in the business or whatever it might be. There has to be a plan on the end of it. And that very rarely happens. And if we can convince businesses that they should do that, again, generally, we're gone by that. I mean, like my ideal is to get an engagement for the last 3 months past the actual application go live to embed and deliver the benefit. But a lot of businesses, no, I understand that, will say, yeah, we don't want to spend that money, we'll do it. And then they don't. They get that benefits realization plan, goes in the top drawer, and they just get on with business as usual. But that's the thing that doesn't happen. And that's where you're getting the payback on the original investment. So I think that kind of really commercial and direct, okay, so what are we going to do differently after we've got this new thing, just doesn't seem to happen. Everybody just focuses on go live, and everybody's usually so exhausted by the time, they just start working.
They go,
Does that make sense? So yeah, see that a lot.
And the other thing in the B2B world in particular, which is where I have a heavy focus now, I've gotten largely out of the retail focus because I think retail's got its own unique basket case set of issues. But in the B2B world, I suggest that most of the brands I work with, they work on an adoption plan before we even go into scoping. And it's not only an internal adoption plan, but it's also a customer adoption plan. And oftentimes I'm tasked with leading the interviews with the customers because they don't quite know how to do it. And they're going, how can we guarantee a level of adoption with our customers until we actually have something to show them? And I'm like, how about we ask them a series of questions, a series of leading questions that says, if we did X, would value Y accrue to you or wouldn't it? And what I find super interesting, and this is a conversation I'm having almost every single day, is that B2B buyers in the B2B world, they don't even use terms like e-commerce. They use the term like buyer's portal. They use the term like procurement system. They use the term like service portal. They don't even use the term e-commerce. So when you go to them and you ask them, hey, if we were to build an e-commerce website, would you use it? They go, what the hell do you mean? What do you mean by e-commerce? Then when you start describing it to them and you say, look, even if you didn't transact with this web login portal, whatever you want to call it, would you like to be able to lodge RMAs digitally? Would you like to be able to request quotes digitally? Would you like to be able to see what we carry digitally? Would you like to check your MOQs, your price lists, your download statements and invoices and all the rest? They go, okay, cool. Maybe I wouldn't press the buy button, but I do all these other digital services wrapped around that. If you offered that to me, that's a massive value to me. And then what we find is that during the adoption phase, once we've gone live, is that maybe for the first 6 months, they only log in to do these 86 other things. But within 6 months, just almost by osmosis, they go, well, I'm in here. Why don't I actually execute the transaction while I'm in here as well? Because it's easy. I've already created the quote request. I've already created all the other pieces of, I've uploaded my PO. I've uploaded the CSV of my request. Why don't I just press the buy button while I'm in here? And so I think what's interesting is that what we think is going to benefit us as a business is oftentimes at diametrically opposed odds to what is going to benefit our customer. And I'm still shocked to this day, 24 years later, I'm still shocked that businesses don't talk to their customers before they go into scoping a solution.
I agree. We've done, we focus a lot on direct consumer retail, you know that, but we've done had a number of B2B clients and done B2B implementations over the years. And for me, it's just about removing friction, right? So I would say to them, look, we're just going to apply the principles that we have in retail and apply them into your business, which is how do we move friction points in the purchasing process? Now, the purchasing process is different, right? That's fine. But frustration with not being able to do something that assists you along that kind of customer purchase pathway is the same. But conceptually, it's the same thing. You just got to remove those friction points. And I think you're right. Yeah, starting with what does the customer want? It is the bleeding obvious. But you're right. It doesn't happen. But it's the same with because I always makes me chuckle when we do it. If I'm ever involved in an ecom project where they're designing the site, and it comes to that hippo effect, highest paid person in the room's opinion of what an amazing website looks like. How would you know? With respect, how would you know? You're a case of one, data point of one.
Yeah.
In my view, what we need to do is get something live as quickly as possible that doesn't, degrade your brand, and then test and measure what your customers want. How about that as an idea, right? It's quicker, time to value is quicker, and then we can actually build something that your customers want. No, it's
risk lower as well.
I was thinking this morning about potential things that we're going to talk about today, but where you've got founder-led businesses, and I've worked with a couple of those in the last 12 months, they think they know best, always. And it's and I've worked with so many, I think back over the years of this business that have gone out of business because they no doubt in whatever field. I remember there's one business I worked with and they made the most amazing shoes and they used to have people queue around the corner for it. And the lady who founded that business was great at making shoes, but she was really bad at running a business, right? And ultimately, it went pop, as they generally do, because they think they know best on everything. And I still know big businesses now where the founder, who frankly should be sat on a boat in the Caribbean somewhere, is
drinking
with no
some
doubt
cocktails down here with me in Mexico.
Great product. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But guess what? They're not great at doing email marketing. And what's worse is they're paying someone who really is great at email marketing.
Yeah.
But they've got to sign off every single email that goes out, even if that means that email is going out late, which has the potential to reduce revenue. It's crazy, but it happens so often. So a lot of the conversations I have now are more on the business psychology level, which is you say you want to grow and scale your business. Fantastic. Can we help you do that? 100%. But here's the thing. You got to let go. Ultimately, you're going to have to hire people and you're going to have to do this thing called trust people. And you're going to have to start measuring what they're doing and holding them to account. And these are all skills that you don't have. And at a base level, are you ready to do that? Because if you're not, then you're going to waste your money because you're going to take your business to a certain point and then you're going to need more people. We had one this year and this guy wants to sign off every image that's taken and he's touching them up and he's doing customer service. And I'm just like, mate, we're on a trajectory now where it's impossible for you to do all of this. And we will continue to grow as we predicted in our forecast. But guess what? You're going to need more people and you're going to have to let go of all this stuff. And you're going to have to stop seeking perfection, right? And just go with good enough. If it's making you money and all of your metrics on your dashboard are moving in the right direction, it's okay if that image isn't perfect, right? It's okay, I think.
Yeah, perfection is the enemy of good, right? That's the saying. Perfection is the enemy of good. And one of the things I encounter, and I don't know if you've encountered this a lot recently, but probably in my last 4 engagements, I'm dealing with literally the grandchild of the founder of the B2B brand. Yep. So that in many cases, they're 50 to 100-year-old B2B brands. I'm now dealing with the grandchild of the founder. They're now the CEO, possibly the COO, sometimes the CSO. In many cases, they're now brought in to modernize the business because they're the grandchild of the founder. But the founder, who oftentimes is still alive and they're still part of the board and they're still coming in and they're second guessing their child and the grandchild now. And I'm going, when was the last time you actually bought anything online? Mr. Grandfather, grandmother, when was literally the last time you bought a single item online? When was the last time you did anything digitally online on your phone, on an iPad, on your home computer? And sometimes I have to be that blunt. I have to say, look, with all due respect, when was the last time you did any digital transaction online at all? Amazon, eBay, any digital transaction online. And oftentimes that's a very harsh but poignant reality check of saying, look, you're second guessing your grandchild when they are literally a digital native. They're 25 years old. They're a digital native. They are ready to rock and roll. They know exactly what's required to stay relevant in today's world. But you will not unshackle them to allow them to run the business in a modern way. This is a big challenge.
Down to, and this is what I see in medium-sized businesses quite a lot, is that governance at board level when it comes to technical innovation or when it comes to making significant technology investments. I just think, one, the boards generally are fairly ill-equipped, and I don't think they challenge nearly enough. And that's their job, right? That governance and that holding the executive to account. Clearly, it doesn't happen with some of the technology decisions that I've seen being made. There is no way that there's a robust conversation. The obvious one, which I'm sure as much as I do, is, let's just buy Shopify, right? Just they use Shopify outbound. It's the new IBM.
Sure.
And I'm like,
it's FOMO. Everybody's got FOMO.
It's Shopify, no doubt. It's a highly capable platform. But is it the right one for you? It's a different question. And it's one that you are not even going to ask and answer. You're just going to jump on the bus and then maybe find out. And I think there's definitely with that particular application, there's a set of businesses where you go, tick, tick, you're in this space, that without doing the detail, most likely on following your 80-20 rule, that'll be the right fit for you. But there's certainly others where you're like, I think we need to put that to the test, to be fair, because you don't want to find out midway through the project when you've got huge customization requirement. You don't want to find that out with I'm not picking on Shopify, I don't want to find that with any application. But so that governance at board level, which I think is effectively what you say, it's just not, certainly in the technology space. I think they bring in people, experts from other business disciplines, but the technologists, and I think this is going back to what I was saying to you before about what we do, is that translation of commerce and risk and operational efficiency and customer experience. It's that translation between how does technology impact those metrics or those factors, and educating the board so they can have a more robust debate. Your typical, I don't want to tar us all with the same brush, but your typical CTO, they're a bit propeller-heady and not very good at articulating in plain English without the jargon. And I think senior people either switch off or they don't want to admit they don't understand what the hell that individual's talking about. So they just go along, let's go with the flow on the decision. And it can be quite catastrophic. You pick the wrong ERP or you pick the wrong commerce platform, that can set you back years.
And I think, to your point, I think agencies bear an equal amount of blame. I think that if I'm an agency and I built a practice around 2 or 3 platforms, and therefore if all I've got is a hammer, every single problem starts to look like a nail. So the reality is that I get a lot of customers that come to me, and at least initially when they first have the first phone call with me is like, why the hell do I need a consultant? That's the first thing they ask. They say, why do you exist? They say, I already have an agency partner, so why would I want to engage with somebody like you? And it's, hang on a second. I've run and built agencies. I've worked brand side. I also had my own e-commerce pure play, and I'm not technology aligned. I don't have a delivery team behind me waiting to build an e-commerce platform for you. I don't have a delivery team behind me of developers just waiting for the fresh meat to be chucked over the fence to keep them all fed. So for me, consultancy is all I do. And so there's a level of inherent independence in my environment, at least, that means that not every problem starts to look like a nail to me because I can pick from any hammer on the wall that I like. And this is a massive differential. And this was the challenge that I found when I was working in agency land. If we had a practice around 2 or 3 commerce platforms. We had to practice around 1 or 2 CDPs. We had to practice around 1 or 2 marketing automation platforms, and maybe 1 or 2 PIMs. The reality is I'm going to shoehorn every single customer that walks through my door into one of those solutions. Whether or not it's the perfect fit or not, I'll make it the perfect solution one way or another. And this is the conversation that I'm having on a very routine basis. They're going, my agency's told me this, and I'm going, but did they ask you these other 36 questions that would possibly qualify out the 3 platforms that they build on? No, they haven't asked you those questions because they want to win the build deal. So they're not going to scuttle their own opportunity. And look, I have a lot of greater than 90% of the agencies that I work with and pass business to backwards and forwards are totally, they have super high morals, they have super high scruples, and if they can't build something that's relevant to the customer, they'll actually tell the customer that. But there is that 5 to 10% of the market that will build anything that will get them the deal and will say anything to get them the deal. And unfortunately, it gives the rest of us a black eye.
And I think, certainly with when you say agencies, I'd actually throw in Deloitte, Accenture, right? They call themselves,
of course,
but they're in my opinion, from what I've seen, the worst offenders. And what's worse, because they come stomping in, especially when we go up against them, they come stomping in with a brand reputation. And generally they're in that business because the auditors, the accountants have been in there and they do the audit, and maybe the corporate risk register and say, oh, you need to have a look at these technology risks that you've got in the business. So then in comes the technology arm of the business, who are, like you say, they are just going to leave her in. And I know this for a fact. I've seen it so many times with companies, with my network of people on the inside of what's going on. They've got 15 developers on the bench of a specific flavor of software. So guess what? The recommendation in that next very expensive consulting is that one. And everything's done to
is that flavor,
who doesn't know any different and trusts that big brand, whichever one it is, and just goes, yeah, okay, we're down with that. We'll follow your recommendation, just because they've got an underutilization problem with that particular technology. And it's just, and therefore, when the business finally figures that out, probably years later, like you say, when people like us rock up,
it's too late.
We are tarred with that same brush, and it's if we can get in. I mean, I have always turned that view. I've had owners and CEOs of business go, I never trusted consultants until now. You've given me the faith back because you've just been really honest about my business and honest about the choices. But the reality, especially the big ones, and it's criminal, but it's not good. And so
it's borderline criminal. Let's call it.
And that's where the governance, I mean, go back to the governance, right? That is where having a robust board who's going to really ask the difficult questions to the executive. So if they haven't asked the difficult questions to whoever's proposing the solution to go back and get the right decision for the business, that needs to be there. And I just don't think they're educated enough. And so I think going on about.
But what if they don't know how? What if they don't know how? What if they're honest with themselves and they take a long, hard look at themselves and they say, we're not technical experts. We're not in a position to even be able to ask the hard questions of an agency, of a vendor, of a solution architect or a system integrator. We're just not in a position to be able to ask smart questions. Yeah. Can you help us ask better questions to get better answers?
Maybe the larger business, B2B businesses you're working with should have a corporate risk register, right? I guess there is if they don't know what they don't know at board level. But even then, if they don't know what they don't know, they're being asked to sign off. Let's be real about this. They're being asked or more, right? Without
on a $500,000 project, for example.
Who's doing the counterfactuals on this? Who's challenging the thinking here? We're all going, yeah, that sounds good because we all trust Fred or we all trust Sheila. I would suggest that no matter how capable Fred or Sheila is, relying on the capability of one individual is a risk. And so you would need a second opinion. You don't need to know any more than that, other than, okay, let's bring someone in who can give us a different perspective. And even then, you can bring in the wrong consultant who is, affiliated, but you're trying to do something about it. So I think to your point of if you don't know what you don't know, I think you've got to say, why are we going along with this? Is challenge. I've not sat on many boards, but when I was back in the UK, sat at director level, that board of directors that we had there, those were fairly scary meetings. They were highly robust. Even if you didn't know anything about that particular subject matter, your role there was to challenge the thinking, to make sure that to eke out any potential issues, because that was a lottery. We couldn't afford to make a mistake, right? You can't mess up your security. 100%.
It's potentially existential for the business, right? It's literally potentially existential. If you go and you make a $500,000 or $1 million investment into an ERP that torpedoes the business, literally it could put you out of business, or it could set you back literally a decade where the grandparent has built the business over the previous 50 years, and you could scuttle 50 years worth of progress in one project that lasts 12 months. And I've actually seen it on more than one occasion where I've been brought in as a consultant, and I've literally been purely the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Jason, can you come in and help us get this project live? It was supposed to be live 6 months ago. You didn't do the architecture. You didn't do the search and select for either the vendor or the implementation partner. However, the project is now failing. Can you come in and act as an essential translator for a period of 1 to 6 months that can translate from the technical side to the business side and from the business side to the technical side, and basically grease the wheels of the project to help get us live? And this is something that I'm seeing more and more of, because I'm seen as an outsider. I'm of no threat to the implementation partner because they've already won the deal. I'm of no threat to the business because I purely want to see them be successful. So I'm brought in purely to act as almost a mediator between the brand and the implementation partners, just to be able to get us live. And I tell you, it's not a fun job, because all parties hate you equally, and they all equally admit that they need you, but it's not a fun time.
No, we do a lot of that. I actually really enjoy that. It's not fun, but I enjoy the challenge because it's a people relationships problem, right? So it comes, like I said at the beginning, how tight is that? How tight's your team? And also when you're selecting, you know this, when we select, I call them partners for a reason. When we select partners that are going to work with the business, we have a look at, what are your stated values of the company? What are your behaviors? To demonstrate to me that you follow those and your team follow those, and have a look to see where there's an alignment at a values level between the client business and the partner ecosystem that they're going to engage with to deliver change, right? Because if there isn't, then there's going to be a problem. And the problem is, it's a software project, right? There's always going to be an issue. And if that's my first litmus test, if you like, if someone comes and goes, oh, no, we don't have any problems ever. Okay, I don't even want to have any further conversation with you, because I know that's just not in any kind of reality. Right. Well,
there's clearly nothing I can help you with. If there's no problem, there's no problem.
How do you turn up to a problem? Do you step up to the plate and hold your client's hand and say, look, this is going to be a bit scary, but I'm here. This is how we're going to approach it. Or do you start getting your contracts out and going, oh, you never said that before, or we're not accountable for this, or whatever. So I think I like those situations because they're really challenging. And for me, it's about trying to create a team where there isn't one. That kind of like that mediation, and we do that. For me, that's a complete failure of a team. You imagine running a football team like that, right? Or anything else. It's crazy. I think that it's ultimately a people problem. What was the other thing I was going to say on that? Was in the mediation. Oh, it's gone. It was really good. No, I've forgotten it now. It'll come back in a minute. Yes. Yeah.
We'll come back to it. I'm going to say something controversial.
Yep.
And I'd love your immediate gut response. I will not work with any client that runs a traditional RFP model. Won't do it. So I don't believe in traditional RFPs. I don't believe that they're a viable way to get to a good result of a project. I believe that RFPs are oftentimes incredibly fraught. There is predetermined winners, and they are ticking a box at board level to run an RFP process to say, hey, we got proposals from 3 vendors or partners or whatever it might be, and so therefore we've ticked the box and we've ticked the governance box and everybody's happy. In my experience, the traditional RFP model has led to more failed projects than anything else. And from an agency side, now from a consultant side, it's a different story. But the reason why I won't engage on this traditional model is because as an agency, there's only 2 winners in an RFP. The one that wins and the one that doesn't respond. And my experience with RFPs has been absolutely horrific because there's typically been predetermined winners and we're just literally ticking a box to make the board happy.
Okay, just a couple of things. One, what's your definition of a traditional RFP?
A traditional RFP is, here's our list of requirements. Here's our requirements list.
Okay, so all right.
How are you going to meet it? What's the timeline? What's the budget? And what's the solution?
And so what would your alternative be? Because we are a big part of our business is running traditional RFPs, but we are running them. third party. Oh, sorry, that was the bit I was going to say before, which is actually aligned with this. Is that we're paid to make career, or we're not paid to make career limiting statement, but we're empowered to make career limiting statements because we're in there to fix problems, right? But this comes back to right at the beginning when I said, how strong is your team? Because what I see is why is it that you've got to have someone external who hasn't the fear of any kind of, right? This comes back to you is how
being fired.
If you've got people in your business who are scared to tell you the truth or to present their opinion, which is surely one of the reasons why that you're hiring people in your business in the first place, especially senior people who are very experienced, why are you then shutting them down? It's crazy. So anyway, that always is a red flag for me when you have to do that. But it comes back to this as well, is that we're impartial. The only agenda we have, as I was saying, is to surface, and the reason why I like our process is to surface as much information as possible to make the most informed decision. I always say to businesses, look, we're going to ask you to make the least shit selection that you can, right? Nothing is going to be perfect for you because it's not bespoke.
I love that. Can I make that the statement of the podcast? We're going to encourage you to make the least shit decision
unless
possible.
You're building something
I love that.
From scratch, right? And you're going with you selecting something. It's not right. 100%.
There's always an element of compromise in any off-the-shelf system. You have to.
What the problems are, not find out later, right? Therefore, for me, a comprehensive process. And whilst we do functions, what do you want it to do? And then we do non-functions of how do you want to do it? From the security, performance, availability, all that stuff that everyone gets very bored with. But we also look at what's the ongoing roadmap? What's your roadmap for your business? What's their roadmap? How often does the roadmap get delivered? Because again, I'm not going to name companies, but you all know companies that come in, oh, yeah, it's on the roadmap. Anything that you want, oh, it's on the roadmap. And then the businesses go, oh, amazing, it's on the roadmap. So my next question is, that's great. How often do you deliver on your roadmap? Can you show me some historic roadmaps and then line up where you've delivered those things? Because I'm a bit skeptical and sometimes the roadmap... And so
I've been burnt by this before, sorry.
There are some that are like, yeah, 100% here you go, and they absolutely line up, pretty much line up. But there's others where... All right.
But like a Shopify, for example, a major public company where they go, okay, we've got these 5 functions. We said they would be delivered in Q2 of 2024. Well, look, we delivered 98% of this functionality in Q2. Great, you're trustworthy.
Coming down the track is going to be delivered. And guess what? That kind of lines up with some of the things, or again, roadmaps are sort of, may be fairly vague as you look out into the future. They go, yeah, those are the type of things that we're going to do. So we've got alignment, right? So we'd look at roadmap. We'd look at partner ecosystem. So how do you, when you bring in your platinum partner, who is a platinum partner because they've sold lots of software, not because they're any good, how do you assess?
They've sold more licenses than anybody else in region.
Businesses here with large IT teams here that frankly should know better, singing the praises, not singing the praises of a platinum partner because they're good, but because they're platinum. And I'm like, do you even know what that means? Maybe you should go back to that 3-lettered ERP company and ask them how they assess their partners and how they award those statuses before you make those comments. And here's a novel idea. Why don't you go and take a handful of their clients and go and have a private conversation about how happy they are with them or not? I'm not trying to catch people out. I just want to know, do they do what they say they do? Mm-hmm. If there's problems, how do they respond? All the things that you would want to know. So, correct.
Because there's always going to be a problem, but it's how they respond to problems. And I was taught, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, and then we'll get into, I've got so many more questions. We could probably go for another 3 hours because you've been at this even longer than me. I was taught, my first career was hospitality. And I was actually taught when I first started working in restaurants underneath very senior management, please bring problems to me as your senior manager, because every one of our customers expects a perfect experience. And when they have a perfect experience, it's not memorable. If they have a shit experience and I make it better, because I solved their problem better than they expected to, we burn their steak. It took us an hour to serve their meal, whatever it might be. We dumped something. We dumped coffee on them at the table accidentally. We dropped a tray, whatever it might be. My managers, my best managers said, bring me your hairiest, scariest, most challenging problems, because the way that I solve them will be more memorable to these customers than if we did everything right from the moment they walk through the door. And that was an incredible learning experience to me. That was something that has stuck with me literally ever since, not only in terms of the service that my business gives, and occasionally we stuff up, but it's how we recover that, but more importantly, how my customers recover the experience with their customers. This is something you're never going to get it 100% right. Agencies are never going to get 100% right. Vendors are never going to get 100% right. But how do they deal with the challenges when they arise?
I agree.
That is the most
and that
important
comes down
factor.
to There's a word for that, and it's integrity. Right? So you want to then have a look and go, is integrity usually is, along with innovation and authorization, is one of your values. Next question is, can you demonstrate? I'm now going to go and talk to some of your customers to see, and ask them if they can give me an example where your organization, and it's not about the guy or girl at the top, it's about right the way down the organization, where people are empowered to operate with integrity, right? And there are businesses
Things right. Can they make things right?
Virgin Australia, I fly with them a lot, and I know that business empowers their customer-facing staff to be able to solve, to break process. I love a good process, but I also like the ability when you have an edge case that pops up and it's the customer that has identified the edge case, that customer-facing representative is allowed to do the right thing. And if that means breaking process, doing things differently, then that's what makes the experience memorable for the customer, is that, because I think we all accept in life that things don't go exactly to plan and life's not perfect and shit happens, right? The question in this, as you rightly say, is how does that organization or the individuals in that organization deal with that? How do they respond? And that's what, and I agree with you, that's what makes those experiences or those moments memorable. And one other thing, and it's usually when they're the worst ones, right? Not you know, we've had it with I remember we had two of my team, and they'd fucked up. That they had the pair, and what made me cross was that both of them, they hadn't called each other out on it, and they were squirming. And the CFO in this business was not. I wouldn't say he's accountable, because that's what we'd be there to make sure this type of thing didn't happen. But whatever, between my two and the CFO, this thing had happened. And their immediate response to me was, it's not our fault. This guy should have, picked up. And I'm like, okay, we'll just stop right there. It's our fault. And in fact, actually, it's you guys' fault, right? We need to own this, right? And here's what we're going to do. Or what you're going to do, actually, is you are going to go in and you're going to apologize. And you're going to own it. And you're going to tell that person that we're going to fix it. Okay? And then we go away and we will fix it. That's it. And I said, it's going to be really uncomfortable for you, but that's what you need to do. It's called ownership. And I will ring the chief exec and I will have the same conversation with him. And they went and did it. They were not comfortable with it. And I said, look, remember this moment. This is important, right? Because it was a big client and it's not existential, right? It's not
a massive learning opportunity, the way I see it.
Pride, ability in doing things well, because we charge a lot of money for what we do. And they went in afterwards when we had the wash up and the kind of feedback loop about how that went. Their relationship with that individual just went up 10 times as far as the quality of that relationship, just by going, do you know what? I'm really sorry I made a mistake and here's what I'm going to do to fix it. I think Brené Brown, I remember reading one of her books or hearing, she said, is own it. And that's my mantra with my team and how I operate, is if you make a mistake and it happens, you own it and you fix it. And so you want to see that in the partners. So going back to your point on these tenders. So we look at, I want to know is their alignment. So we look at partner ecosystem. We look at roadmap. We then look at, what are the other things we look at? Ongoing is how does it going to fit in with your operations? So if you're going, I don't know, I think we're over the hump here, but moving from on-prem, I can't believe I'm still talking about this now. There is still a contingent that love a good on-prem solution. Probably B2B. Actually, B2B tend to be they love it. Because they've got
more on-prem, yep.
So we've gone through that. But when you're moving from, let's say, on-prem to SaaS, or like now actually with Headless, you're moving from a SaaS to a bespoke
SaaS back to half on-prem, and we're going to host the front end, and we're going to own the customer experience, and we're going to own security and all that crap.
How is the solution going to fit in with your internal ecosystem of other technologies and capabilities to support those? What changed? So we look really holistically. So when we get and initially start to go, how important are these things to you? Some businesses, cost is everything. Some businesses are like, I don't even want to consider cost. Not important to us. Making the right decision, the most important thing. So we weight all of those things, so that when we've gone through and we come out
decision-making factors,
objective scores at the end, I'd like to think we've considered as much as we possibly can. So it's not just here's 300 point spreadsheet with our functional desires. It is a holistic, let's think of everything: commercial, risk, operational integration, what's the quality of the partner system. The reality is that we'll probably fall out with a partner at some point in the next 5 years. How many others are there? How well enabled are they by the software provider? Right, all that stuff.
Is there a safety net?
Looking at the contracts, how easy is it for me to reverse out of this? I always ask the question, how easy is it for me to get out of business with you? Again, a factor for making a decision. So I'm a firm believer of the traditional RFP process, but when you look at all of those things, but I think in your case, your citing case, if it is just a paper exercise, so and I don't go anywhere near government, but if you go into kind of government.
And I don't either. And I don't work with public companies.
Right.
I have a firm policy. I don't work with government, and I don't work with public companies.
It's not going to, it's a box ticking exercise, right? So it's not going to add any value because you're just going to say you're doing something rather than.
So how do you deal with a scenario where a vendor, whether it be software, whether it be an implementation partner, how do you deal with a scenario where they tick every single box from a technical capability perspective, from a contractual perspective, from a price, timeline, scope perspective? They tick all the boxes, but there is likely to be a scenario where the team that will actually be doing, because I've seen this over and over again, and I guess I have latent trauma from my agency background. But oftentimes the agency principal, the people that are responding to the RFP, the solution architects, the best people in the business, the A team who responds to the RFP, the A team that joins the call, the A team that answers all the questions is not necessarily the team that's actually going to be the PM, the AM. They're not going to be doing the implementation. They're not the tech lead that's actually going to be assigned to the project. How do you account for that? And how do you allow for that, especially in a scenario where we're dealing with a business that it's very difficult to know as an agency when a project is going to land and they're going to sign on the dotted line. So therefore, even if I want to, and even if I want to be transparent, I can't tell you with 100% certainty which of my dev pods, for example, is going to be assigned to a project until you sign on the dotted line. This is a real challenge. And I also think that the traditional RFP process, and I'd love your thoughts on how you get around this, the traditional RFP process that I've been exposed to as an agency that I've had to respond to, it's completely sanitary, meaning that oftentimes we don't even get a chance to have a conversation with the customer until the third or fourth round of selection. And so therefore, the customer doesn't even know physically who we are as people. And oftentimes, you might have 3 or 4 vendors that tick all the boxes, but those personalities may not mesh. So how do you account for teams that respond versus teams that deliver? And how do you respond to a scenario where the RFP process makes it so sanitary that those subtle differentiating factors beyond the price, the scope, the timeline that impact how a team will work with the buyer, the merchant?
I think that's where in the process that we follow, looking at, so we bring vendors in early, so that kind of keeping them at arm's length is nuts, but we bring them in early. But that's why we look at the values and behaviors of the organization. And so that plays a significant factor in our decision making. The other thing I didn't mention before that we also do is interviews with their customer base. So you're right, ideally, we would like to know who the implementation team is going to be so we can talk to them and get some sense of their capability. But if we're unable to do that, and I think it's a legitimate claim from an agency to say, look, until you sign, we cannot be certain of exactly who you're going to get. So the next best thing, which we do, is to interview half a dozen of their clients. Now, what we don't do is say, which every agency would do, right? Why wouldn't you? Here's my show ponies. Here's the people I've got personal relationships. So they're going to say,
here's my top 3 case study clients.
So we don't do that. We will say, okay, give me your client list. And we're either Australia is a much smaller market and everybody knows everybody and I know everybody. So I've got my own ways of knowing which projects.
You're on the Rolodex, so to speak.
Those. But Germany will go, look, give us your client list, and then we will pick. So there's a little bit, ideally, I can say, okay, we definitely want to talk to that one and that one because I know there were problems. But equally, and I did have one agency owner who are now a very big agency. And we'd gone through this process and he rang me and he said, because I said, look, I don't want you he gave us 3 show ponies. I said, mate, I'm not interested, right? I want to talk to this company and this company. And he was like, I'm not going to let you talk to them. And I'm like, that's interesting. Why? And he said, we've given the 3 companies and I said, you haven't answered my question. Why would you not want me to talk to any of your customers? about any, because I said, now you're introducing in my mind, can I trust you? What is it that you've got to hide that you would correct?
I'm going to now pick at the scab.
But, introduces a whole load of other questions that I really don't want to introduce, which if you just let me talk to the people that I want to talk to, I'll forget that we're having this conversation, right? And so
then it wouldn't be a problem.
Finally, because I said, it's up to you, because if you don't, then we're just removing you from the process. It's really that simple. And they were actually, and we did go on to select them, and they were the front runner, and they were very good. And they are
the front runner. Were they the front runner?
And it's idiotic. Honestly, it's idiotic, because I said, I'm prepared. I will pull you from this process, because on the basis of a values point of view, I'm now questioning your integrity. I'm now questioning your trustworthiness, because what have you got to hide? And do you know what? We spoke to their clients, and there was one final thing I said to him. I said, look, I will give you my word on this. I said, this is not a witch hunt. I'm not interested in embarrassing you or finding out your dirty secret. That's not the motivation. What I want to
burning you at the stake. That's not the goal of this.
That's what I want to understand. And I understand that if you've got inherent weaknesses in a lot of agencies, right? You know this. They might be good at software development. So software development lifecycle will check their capability really good. Bloody hopeless at project management, right? Rubbish. Right. So,
or account management post live.
We provide project management, so that we have ways of mitigating that risk, but we can't mitigate it if we don't know about it. So it's not about.
Yes. Nobody likes to be surprised is a key mantra of mine. Nobody likes to be surprised.
Identifying. Stop. You would be an idiot, and I would be an idiot, to think that you're perfect and that all you have is strengths as a company. You will have weaknesses. I want to understand what those are, so that we can do something about it. So we can put those on the risk register. You can keep an eye on them. We can keep an eye on them in the project, but they're exposed and we know about them. So I said, this isn't about stitching you up. This is about just understanding a balanced view of your organization. And I can't do that if you're only going to show me the good side, because this conversation will be 20 times worse if we're having it in 4 months' time when we're in the middle of the project and that thing you didn't want us to know appears, right? So I said, look, you have my word. This is not a stitch up.
Crops up.
So we went through, and actually there were a few bits and pieces, but nothing. And his clients on the whole were fairly complimentary, and they ticked all the boxes and they scored well. But he almost blew it out of the water because he didn't want to potentially face up to any issues that he had. So we absolutely do that as part of the process, because I've had situations where the technology is great. The technology, in my view, plays about 50% of the effectiveness of the overall solution, right? The implementation partner is there, right? You go back to when Hybris was being implemented, right? Now, Hybris.
Yes.
I think at its time it's complicated, but it is and I've implemented it, right? And it is a comprehensive, PIM's great. It's got a lot of capability.
It's a beast.
An opportunity. But you know what? It failed here because the implementation partners just did not have the capability, and the clients did not have the maturity in their processes to manage a very tier one application. So I'd say to clients.
Also, what I found, and this is just digging a little bit deeper, I want to pick that scab on Hybris for a moment because I think it's beneficial for the audience. What I found, and this is NetStarter and it's everybody else that tried to implement Hybris as their first serious hardcore enterprise platform implementation, they seriously underestimated the timelines, they seriously underestimated the scope, and they seriously underestimated the budget, and they actually shot themselves in the foot. Whereas if they would have said, look, we don't actually know. We don't know. This is the first time we've ever implemented an enterprise scale application of this type before. And if they were just a little bit more transparent, if they were just a little bit more honest, they said, look, we're going to learn on the fly here because this is the first time we've done this implementation. We've done our training. We're now certified, blah, blah, blah. We've got a baseline of knowledge. We've got a baseline of capability. But if they were just a little more transparent and they were a little bit more honest, the customer would have been expecting the challenges that come with any enterprise scale implementation. And when the timeline blew out from 12 months to 18 months, nobody would have been surprised. But when you say, we will get you live 100% guaranteed within 12 months, or we will 100% guaranteed get you implemented within $800,000 or whatever it might be, when you make ironclad guarantees and these are contractual, this is when you get into problems, especially if you don't have the experience to back it up.
I'd agree. Back to with Hybris, I think had that, and I think everyone involved in the sales knew this. If they had done back in that transparency, a lot of retailers had said, no, I'm out here. I'll go to Magento. That's what we're doing. No.
Yeah. They would never even have a chance. They would never even have a chance of winning that deal.
we actually delivered 3 Hybris projects. Okay, we did a Hybris project for a prominent retailer in 4.5 months. Okay, I had 3 people here and I had an offshore team. So we had that complexity of offshore. Here's my take on that. This is where partner capability is really important. If you run a tight software project, right, and you follow the disciplines of software development lifecycle and project management, you can implement it. We did. Well, we absolutely did. But if you take the approach, and I spoke to someone who he reckoned the differences were because Hybris is written in Java, right? And I'm not a software developer, but I understand the development lifecycle and processes. He's saying designing and implementing a Java-based project is way harder and more complicated than some say JavaScript, right? But a lot of the agencies who don't have the software development disciplines were having a crack at Hybris. That's what was going on.
And Demandware, for that matter, at the same time. So they were struggling with the same thing because it was also Java.
Taking the orders like they normally do, tell Mr. Client, what do you want? Yeah, you can have that, you can have that, you can have that. And then got back to the drawing board and went, okay, how are we going to code it? And then found that actually it was going to be 10x.
They went, oh my God, I can't even freaking deliver this. It's going to take me six times as long.
Hybris had those accelerators, right? But I actually, and I said to them,
yes, that's right. As did Demandware, actually.
With a Penman partner, we took over the project and started again. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick to the accelerators. I want you as the client to tell me why we shouldn't do it this way. Because if we stick to the accelerator, it's built. This is one of the things when it was shown to me, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It's mostly done. Let's just build.
It's 75% complete.
Going, yeah, okay, park that over there. Let's start from the beginning. What do you want? And then we'll build something and bastardize it from the accelerator. We just went with the accelerators. And I said, if we're going to make an exception from the accelerators, if we're going to have to do a customization, I need you to be sure that you've got a business case, because it's not only the cost of the customization, it's the ongoing cost. I said, that's going to affect your upgrade
of the change.
Because we're going to have to remediate that code every time a software release comes out.
We got tech debt at day one launch if we deviate from the accelerator.
Stick to the accelerator unless there is a justification that we all agree with, and we all agree with the ongoing, future cost and what it means to the project. And I think we accepted 12. But apart from that, we stuck with it.
12 change requests effectively out of a potential 100.
That went into UAT in under 16 weeks. And we did the same. So when I first dipped my toe into the e-commerce space with City Beach back in 2010, I think 2009, that was IBM Webster Commerce, right? Tier 1 Java-based application. We had that entire online channel, I think it was 100 days, right? And that's not the website, that was everything, but a website obviously being a component. But they had
everything, system integration,
photographic,
UAT, QA, everything.
Warehouse to be able to call direct to consumers because they've never done. So the entire business going from a retail business to a direct to consumer online business.
Omni-channel business.
All this stuff. We did that. We did all of that in that time. But my point is that the web component was just a component of a program of projects. And we did that very quickly because they had, the company that we worked with had something similar to the accelerator where you just accept how this thing works, right? And if you do that, we can implement it really quickly, which we did. That's why, going back to my original point, that's why the capability of the implementation partner, because when you look at Hybris, I know that it's very capable. I don't know what it looked like now, but at that point, highly capable and had some amazing features in it that Magento, and this is pre-Shopify, I think early BigCommerce days, didn't have. So there was a lot of value. But I used to say to people, unless you've got the commensurate level of capability to implement and manage moving forward, do not be wowed by the software, because that's only half the story. So when anybody turns up with a piece of software, they go, oh, look, it's amazing. It does all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, first of all, what premise? You've just shown me they show you a demonstration. What premise is there as far as the data quality and the integration quality to get us to this point?
What assumptions have you made to get us to this level?
And also, how long is it taking you to build that over what period of time? And how replicatable is it by your partner ecosystem if you've got one? Because generally, that's what happens. They come in and the show pony rocks up and they show you this amazing stuff. The CEO or the founder goes, oh, that's amazing, let's do it. And then realizes, 6 months and
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
this is going to be, it's going to be 2 years before we can get to this level. And I saw the same, to be fair, I saw the same with ATG. Like basically any enterprise piece of software over the last 20 plus years, I saw the exact same thing. They'd come in, they'd parade the technology, they would show me a best case scenario demo with perfect data, perfect system integration, the same back end as the front end. So in other words, if it was ATG, they were running an Oracle database. If it was Hybris, they were running SAP on the back end. They were running some homegrown bespoke ERP that required custom integration. And so as we come down to the end of our time together, man, an hour is absolutely blown by. And I love your passion. I love your commitment. I just love the energy that you bring to this space, because you're clearly committed. You clearly love the space. You clearly love merchants. You also love vendors. You also love implementation partners. You got a lot of love to spread around the traps, but you also have an equal amount of accountability that you share with any kind of delivery partner that you choose to engage with, which I love accountability. But if you were to give 1, 2, 3 top tips to a merchant, okay, let's qualify this. Let's say it's a B2B merchant. They're doing EDI today. Maybe they're doing punch out. They've never done e-commerce before, self-service e-commerce. And they're coming into this like a lamb to the slaughter. And they're going, we want to do self-service e-commerce for the very first time. What are 1 or 2 or 3 top tips that you would give to them to help mitigate the risk of a very Gen 1 e-commerce implementation? Let's say they're doing $50 million a year in GMV today.
3 tips. I would be very clear. I would have a roadmap. You may not know exactly how you're going to do what you're going to do, but don't try and bite off more than you can chew. I'm a lover of, do something achievable and fast, right? And because it's not just about, and deliver some value, because it gets the confidence up as well of the people in the business, the partners you're working with. So get some, I hate quick wins, but deliver something achievable first, and then take on something a little bit more complicated. So I think be realistic about what it is that you can achieve, rather than, and I know directors are terrible, right? Come in and this grand
Don't
vision.
boil the ocean, right? That's my saying. That's the saying I use all the time.
Chunks. And whilst you might not be clear on the detail, be clear on the vision and the benefits that's going to deliver would be the first one. I think by all means, talk to definitely consultants. Of course, I wouldn't say anything different. Talk to consultants who have done this many times before and know all of the potential pitfalls. But probably more importantly, or equally importantly, is go and talk to some businesses that have done it. I always say this to all my clients: don't listen to me. Don't listen to the software company. Go and talk to people who've done it.
Don't listen to Jason.
Right, and
go and talk to some merchants.
Let them talk to you honestly and openly about what the challenges were for them, the things that worked for them, so that you've got a really good sort of holistic view of all the potential benefits, but also the potential risks that you're exposed to. So I don't think you can talk to too many people about those things. And then I think thirdly is just make sure that if you're picking new technology, really think about how it's going to, not only what it can do for you, it's that kind of the features, that functions of what can it do, but the non-functions of how does it perform? If this is wildly successful, how does it scale? What is the partner ecosystem? What is the roadmap? So think about all the possible things that can go wrong and try and ask all those questions before you make a decision.
Or go right, because at the end of the day, sometimes the adoption rate might be higher than you expect. And it's, oh my God, we expected 20% of our customer base to adopt this in the first 12 months. We now have 80%. Oh my God, we are not ready to scale this solution to 80% of our customers in the first 12 months. That's a massive challenge.
We, certainly with B2C businesses, is I try to do on paper financially, what does great look like? What does good look like? What does average look like? And with the numbers. So how many orders are you going to be picking? How much money are you going to need to invest into digital marketing? What are all the implications commercially in order to achieve different scenario types? And then how are we going to do that? So like you say, I used to say to people about if you buy into it's a cheap piece of software that's got limitations. I'm like, so the consequence of making that decision, I understand you haven't got the cash and you understand the reasons for making that sort of constrained solution is, if this is wildly successful, in the middle of your wild success in 18 months time, you're going to have to stop everything and you're going to have to re-implement, you have to re-go through this, which is going to be a lot harder because now you've got a business that's growing and you've got customers that are expecting delivery. You need to take that into account as part of your risk If you're going to underinvest, that's fine, but it comes with
The
a set
risk
of
register.
consequences. Equally, if you overinvest and you buy a tier one, that's why I used to have these conversations, tier one solution, like here are all the implications around
Solution.
that. So you better be pretty damn sure that you can get this business to 100 million a year, because if you can't, you're going to be carrying all of this additional cost and complexity for no good reason. So I think doing as much as you can on, I'm going to say on paper, but without spending the money, and almost like role playing, wild success.
Scenario planning, right? Scenario forecasting.
Once you're up and running, if you're off budget or off plan successfully, we're 40% under budget. I don't go, amazing. I'm like, why? Was your forecasting wrong? Right? Why? I'm equally curious as to over delivery as to under delivery. Why is it different from what we expected? Not that I can berate someone or congratulate them, so I can understand, did we get our forecasting wrong? In which case, if we did, let's change how we forecast, right? Lesson learned. Or have we missed something, which is what I'm really interested in. If we're under budget, why? Have we missed something that we were supposed to do? Yeah, correct. I think get curious
What do we overlook?
about anything that deviates from what you're expecting, well, as you go through. But I do a lot of it try and get a lot of it on paper, map out the processes, map out the integrations. I remember on the project I worked with you, I think we ran through, especially when we had a middleware layer, is you run through.
We ran through 4 different scenarios. We ran through the data layer. We ran through the integration endpoints. We said, okay, here's what happens if we use an integration middleware tool. What happens if we build this bespoke with bespoke endpoints using Lambda? And we basically, I call it like wargaming. That's the term I use. We need to wargame out these different scenarios.
So all of that, right? So wargaming, again, being clear on the long-term picture, break it down into bite-sized chunks, and go and talk to people. I don't know whether you find there's some businesses that they don't want to talk to each other, and it's crazy.
They're afraid. Especially in the B2B world, they're afraid. They go, that's our secret sauce. If I admit to them that I don't know everything, then that makes us look weak. Or if I say I know everything, then that makes us look like we're a soft target for a market that a competitor could come into and make a lot of money off of. And I see this even in B2B conferences. I see a real reticence for B2B brands that are successful to stand on the stage and say what made them successful and the gotchas that people in their similar situation need to watch out for. I see something totally opposite in the B2C and D2C world. B2C and D2C brands love getting up on stage because they look at it as a marketing opportunity. They go, it's a free chance to put our name and our brand up in lights. Whereas B2B says we want to play our cards close to our chest. But it's the inverse when we get into the vendor area. When we look at the vendor area in B2B, a lot of these vendors, they're little known. Nobody's heard of them. And so a lot of B2B brands, they love going into the vendor area and they go, oh my God, I didn't even know this technology existed. And they go, show me a demo. This is amazing. Whereas in the B2C world, everybody's heard of Klaviyo. Everybody's heard of Gorgeous. Everybody's heard of everything. And so they avoid the vendor area like the plague because they're going, I already know everybody. Everybody's already tried to sell me something. So I'm going to avoid the vendor area like the plague. It's a totally different mindset. From the stage in the B2C world, everybody likes to put their name up in lights. In B2B, they don't. In the B2C world, they avoid the vendor area like the plague. In the B2B world, they embrace it. So it's just a different world.
The B2B clients that we've worked with over the years have been trying to, actually, some of them going direct to consumer, but there's a few that are just trying to digitize their business. And I think there's a lot of lessons. My view is, because they say, why should we work with you? Work with direct to consumer retail. I'm like, because there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from how retail have had to respond to the changes in digital and the transformation of their businesses. Yes, the direct application is different, but if you think about how do we remove friction, that's the key. And there's still today, when I talk to retailers, you should be looking at where are the friction points in the process, like returns, for example, right? It can be a nightmare. And I actually feel anxious if I'm buying from a retailer I've not bought or a brand I've not bought from before, because if there's any problems, what are they going to be like? As soon as you know what they're like, and if they're easy to deal with, then you'll continue shopping with them forever as long as the product's good. And it's similar with B2B. It's why wouldn't you make it as easy as possible for people to do business with you? And that should be your mission and your mantra, right? And do whatever it takes, as long as it's commercially viable, to remove friction points from the whole process, outbound and inbound. And that's it. And that's what retail is. It took them a while to get there, but I think they get it now. Although interestingly, I know it's going slightly off topic, there's some new tech I'm quite excited about at the moment that's actually going to facilitate disruption in the physical store space, right? Because if you think, I was talking to people about this, or just kind of philosophizing over what's going to happen and what should happen, I'm thinking like for the last probably, I don't know, maybe forever, but like certainly 20 years, if I go into a store and I want to buy something, what do I have to do? I have to queue up, to go to a till, right? 20, and it's probably
Of course
more.
you do.
Probably more.
Of course I do. There's at least self-checkout at supermarkets, but there's no self-checkout at retail.
Innovative, but it still requires me to queue up and go to a till. So there's this new tech coming through now, which I think has been long overdue to really disrupt the store experience beyond kiosks and magic mirrors and all that stuff. Like to really remove, it's quite radical, take the till out of the store. Can you imagine? Gone, right? So, and the technology's there now linked in with OMS to be able to really, right? And so, and that's where I'm trying to have those conversations at kind of board CEO level of going, and the data that backs up the AOV increase and the overall revenue increase from these new technology solutions is I go to CEO and go, look, you're looking for incremental growth. You've been squeezing your online and the investment that's gone in. You think all of the PIMs that are right, and you've done nothing here. And the
what about physical?
Kind of like when you talk through what's possible, as well as operational efficiencies in store, I think that's quite exciting. I'm certainly trying to steer the narrative and conversation, if you like, with digital back to the stores, because I think they've been forgotten, really.
Completely. And I think physical stores are the crown jewel of retail. And we see statistics that show that, for example, there's numerous statistics that show unequivocally somebody that uses a card in store versus cash spends 25% more. Somebody that is an omni-channel shopper, their average lifetime value, their CLV is 25% more. We just see every statistic under the sun that shows pure play online businesses simply do not perform as well as omni-channel businesses, and omni-channel businesses that encourage card transactions versus cash transactions perform significantly better. So this is all about consumer psychology 100%. Here. And this is all about trust.
Yeah,
mate, look, we could talk for another 3 hours. We've been going for an hour and 15 minutes. Absolutely love it. Love your thinking. Love where your head's at on this. If people want to get a hold of you, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile. I'll put a link to the It Works website. Other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you and have a conversation about omni-channel, successful projects, experiences that you've had, learnings that you've had that you can share with them, ways in which they can run successful projects and RFPs, etc. How do you like people to get a hold of you?
That's the easiest way these days. I think to know that I'll see it. I get lots, as with everybody, you get lots and lots of emails every day, and it's possible they slip through your cracks. If you DM me in LinkedIn, I will reply to everybody 100%. Yeah.
Just like you sent me a message on LinkedIn and I respond almost immediately. Now, amazing. I'll put all those links in the profile. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question. Any question you like can be personal or professional. So, Mr. Paul Downs, founder and MD of It Works. What is your question for me today?
Question, you're putting me on the spot now, but I would be interested to know about scale, because I've come from Europe, and everything that's done there, because of the size of the market, is much, much bigger. What difference does the scale, because the North American market is massive, so the numbers that you will be dealing with are much bigger than they are here. How does that scale, do you see a difference in the consideration in how decisions are made to select technology and implement technology? Because I know that when I worked in the UK, we were very careful, because to the size of market we're working to, you're going to be spending tens of millions on projects. And you've obviously worked down here and you're over in North America now. How does that difference in scale and size of market change how businesses that you work with make their decisions? Are they more rigorous?
Yeah, look, I think there's absolutely more rigor. Their appetite for risk and their tolerance for risk is significantly, like orders of magnitude higher. But the challenges they face as businesses are so analogous that I could be dealing with a $30 million business in ANZ, and I could be dealing with a $300 million business in the US, for example. And the challenges that they're facing and the complexities that they're facing are so similar. It's bizarre. I'm going, you're 10 times bigger or 100 times bigger, but yet you're facing the exact same fear, risk, challenges, people problems. And the biggest challenge that I see in the B2B e-commerce world, particularly in North America, is that whilst D2C and B2C are extremely mature, they're 10 to 15 years ahead of the general B2B e-commerce or digital specialist. And so the B2B world is struggling it's so hard right now. They're going, okay, do we upskill some internal people who are experts in B2B and know our business inside and out, know the challenges of B2B, but need digital skills? Or do we bring in someone with digital skills from outside, and then we try to bring them up to speed on all the nuances and the challenges of B2B? Because in the B2B world, we don't just do self-service e-commerce. We got EDI, we got punch out, we got integration with ERPs, we got all these other things to consider. And these are the things that I'm seeing that are the differentiating factors. It's not so much the scale. With modern SaaS platforms, Infiniscale is built in most instances, not 100% of the time, but even if we're looking at something as simple as Shopify, whether you're a $10 million a year GMV business, or you're a $100 million a year GMV business, or you're a $1 billion a year GMV business, to Shopify, it's not that much different. They don't really care. They're running a clustered environment that auto scales, and they don't really care that much. And it's the same with most modern CDPs, PIMs, ERP, your NetSuites of the world, your e-commerce platforms, your Oros, your VTEXs, your et cetera, et cetera. So scaling has largely been solved. Where the challenge comes in is when you have highly integrated systems, and which becomes the system of record for each piece of data, when it gets integrated, what the integration triggers are, what the frequencies are. Is it webhooks? Is it simply an API call that's based on REST? We start thinking about many more systems of record in the B2B world. And we typically have, because let's just look at the data models, for example. In the B2C world, price is an attribute of the product. In the B2B world, price is an attribute of the customer. Now, there are a million other nuances like this in the B2B world that if you're not aware of those nuances and you go in with your standard solution architecture mind from the B2C world and you get into the B2B world, you will just get run over. You will absolutely get mauled. And luckily, I was exposed to some very complex B2B businesses pretty early on in my career. And so I learned some of these nasty gotchas from very early on, and they've served me well up until today. But it's odd, but it's almost embarrassing to say, regardless of scale, it is down to the people problem. It change management, whether you're a $50 million business or a $1 billion a year business. Change management is so difficult because invariably with the projects I'm involved in, someone in the business will feel threatened. When in actuality, if I can get literally 10 minutes with a sales team, when I go into these large B2B organizations, they might have 100 people in their sales team. When I first walk through the door, I'm the devil. I'm the devil himself, because they're going, you're going to pick my pocket. You're going to take away my commissions. You're going to replace me with technology. You're going to replace me with e-commerce. And then if I get literally 10 to 15 minutes with a sales team, I will exit the building being their best friend, because all I want to do is take away the most painful part of their daily job and empower them to do a better job for their customers and give them more free time to go to the ball game, to buy them a beer, to put them up in the box seat, to take them out to dinner, to take them to the local jazz festival. I actually empower salespeople to do a better job with digital technology than they would otherwise. I don't want to replace them. I want to empower them. And these are the conversations that are just so difficult to have initially. But if I can get my foot in the door, I will make people froth at the mouth at the opportunity that digital will afford them. And that's where I land on that.
I've now thought of several more, but I think we're out of time. And I guess is your base. I know you work in North America, but you're based in Mexico, right? And so therefore, you presumably don't have any skin in the game.
I'm based in Mexico. I live in Puebla now.
I'm not asking you who you would vote for, but who do you think is going to win?
Oh, man, it's definitely a two-horse race now. I would have said Trump 100% when Biden was the front runner. It was an absolute no-brainer. I still think Trump's going to take it. I really do. I think he's going to take it. I think the interview tonight with Kamala is going to expose potentially some gaps in policy that she's never been questioned on before. And of course, as vice president, she wouldn't get asked. The president is the one that gets asked the questions, not her. And so this is the very, very first time she's going to get probed. That sounds dirty, but she's going to get deeply probed more now on policy questions than she's ever had to before, because she's never had to front up before. So I think if the media do their job, if they do their job, if they actually are willing to ask the hard questions, which up till now they haven't been prepared to do because they've been caught up in the vibe, the feeling, the vibe, as opposed to policy questions, I think it's going to be a dogfight right down to the wire.
I presume it's part of his strategy. I think Trump will pick it because he's now this kind of unity approach of bringing Kennedy in, Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know who else he's got, but I think if he brings more of these, because I'd love to have seen a Robert Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard ticket, right? Amazing.
Oh, 100%. I think they would have been.
He's got these
amazing,
sensible, thoughtful, patriotic people surrounding him. It's got to pause, certainly for the independent voters, got to give them a moment to pause to go, is he really the devil? Is he really as bad as everybody makes out?
And he wasn't even the devil when he was the president. He wasn't the one. Everybody said he's going to start more wars than any president before him. He's going to be the dictator. And he actually wasn't. There was actually a de-escalation of international tensions under Trump. And look, regardless of what you feel, look, I think the president of the United States is largely a figurehead anyway. But the reality is that all the threats or the risks that people said about him in his first term, almost none of them came to fruition. So you can't say this guy's going to be a warmongering dictator when the proof is in the pudding, and he wasn't actually that in his first term.
It's so precarious right now, so precarious. And
the Middle East, it's just, America has to extract themselves from it. It's terrible.
Hearing the war stories from senators about how he was dealing with the Afghanis before the pullout there, and he's hardcore, and you need someone hardcore that's going to go toe-to-toe with these guys, right? And use the power, wield the power responsibly that the United States has got. I just don't have any confidence with Biden, certainly. I'm not sure he knows what day of the week it is, but I can't see Harris and Waltz being able to wield that power responsibly. And I think the highest priority right now is to get stability in Ukraine and, as you say, in the Middle East. So we'll see what happens. It's interesting times. But I think if he's surrounding himself with these people, and if that is the strategy, and right the way up to election day, he's got these kind of sensible thought leaders surrounding him, then I think that might help. But it's going to be close, though.
I don't know if you heard him on the All In podcast, but that was possibly the most moderate Trump I've ever heard, ever. Like, normally he's all about the rhetoric. He's the you're fired. He's the TV guy. He's great at putting on this amazing Hollywood a facade. But when I heard him on the All In podcast, he was probably the most tame, the most calm, the most level-headed, the most sane, dare I say it. And you would never normally attribute sane to Trump, but he was definitely speaking language that was the most sane of any of the candidates at that time. And it was just like, look, we need to de-escalate this. We need to wind back our national debt. We need to wind back the involvement of our military in every single region of the world. He was talking like the most moderate guy you can possibly imagine, and that was not what people traditionally expect of Trump. Let's put it that way.
Which Kennedy came out with, Make America Healthy Again, and that's for the protection of the children. It's the 100% the right thing to do. The more I hear about, but obviously been over the last few years a lot more interested in the medical establishment globally, let's say, that country is is appalling as far as the health of the nation. And so I think any administration that's putting that as front and center for the future of their country has got to be a powerful argument that you would throw at the current administration to say, why haven't you done anything about this before now? I think it's very powerful, and certainly as an outsider,
totally.
I'm very interested in politics. So it's fascinating to watch. Somewhat frustrating, but fascinating.
It is. Paul, this has been a fantastic conversation. This is the longest out of 416 episodes. This is the longest podcast episode I have ever had, and it's been a true joy, and I really appreciate your time. I can't wait to speak to you again soon.
But I'm glad we've got there in the end. But yeah, it's been a great conversation, and let's do it again.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.